And I'm going to introduce to you one of the speakers for today, Gary Ziny. Gary is the Managing Director of the Pros and the Cons of Powell, Ohio. He is a nationally recognized speaker on fraud, auditing, ethics, and performance, and more than 20,000 professionals have attended his classes since 1987. And his clients have included the FBI, U.S. Attorney, Bar and CPA Associations, International Accounting Firms, Institute of Internal Auditors, the SEC Institute, National Association of Security Dealers, Grant Thornton, among many others. Gary has a master's in accounting, and he has published more than 25 professional articles, and he's the author of CEO's Complete Guide to Committing Fraud and Outside-the-Box Performance.
That introduction, welcome everybody to CPA Crossing, and my name is Gary Ziny, and I'm the Managing Director of the Pros and Cons in Powell, Ohio. And today we're bringing to you something that I'm not aware that's ever been done before, is we are doing a live video interview with today's guest is Scott London. And there are three of us on the webcast, Scott, myself, and Heinz Hickert, who is a certified fraud examiner and does a lot of litigation work. And so I'm going to ask Scott to tell you just a little bit about himself, and then we'll pass it off to Heinz to introduce himself. Scott?
All right, Gary, thank you very much. Certainly wish this was under different circumstances that I was speaking with you all today. But anyway, I'm a little bit of background. I'm 51 years old, father of two, married, live in Agora Hills, California, Southern California. And I started at KPMG in 1984, and over the years worked up the ranks to I'm a partner in 1995. While I was at KPMG, I worked predominantly on consumer market companies. And then in 2004, I took over the Pacific Southwest audit practice and managed that until April of 2013, at the time of my arrest and the proceedings of insider trading. So I spent a lot in my role as managing the practice for 10 years. I looked over well over 500 personnel, 300-400 clients, and I managed the P&L, profit and loss for the office. And it was a great gig. It's a great firm. Love the people there. Love the firm. Just wish it was under different circumstances that I was here today. Followed in my father's footsteps, who was not an auditor, but had a tax practice for years and years and years, and obviously it served our family well. He worked really, really hard, and I worked for his company for a small practice, like 15, 20 people in the partnership. And I worked there while I was going to high school, actually, and then I also worked there while I was going to college. And I was around it. It seemed like a solid field. So aside from that, I also met, while I was going to college, met a bunch of other people whom I now consider to be my close friends even today, where we just all kind of got together, got into accounting, and kind of motivated ourselves to do well. And really the entire group, by 8 to 10 people, we all kind of scattered into different big four firms, and most of which, I think I was the last one standing that was still with the firm. A lot of them had left much more earlier than I did, and under different circumstances. But that's really how I got into accounting, and really, I wouldn't say it's a default, but it's really, for the most part, the only thing I knew based on my upbringing. It was enjoyed what I did, very much. As I said, kind of worked up the ranks and spent a great deal of time doing a lot of different things. But what I really enjoyed, what I think I learned a lot from the time with the firm is through the interaction with people and learning how to kind of be a leader of people and how to help bring out kind of the best in people along the way. And that's kind of how you talk about the nuts and bolts that I learned while at KPMG and things that in the profession. But really, the profession is really about kind of interaction with people, working with people, and just working, whether it be clients or your employees or the partners or what have you. It's really all about, those relationships. And, interestingly enough, over a period of time, my personal relationships and, you reach a time in, I think in your life where you've been doing something for a period of time and sometimes something happens which might lead to a potential impairment of your judgment. And, certainly I think that was the case, and that contributed to how this entire thing went down in terms of, I certainly knew better, followed the rules, but, things happened in somewhat of a perfect storm with an individual, his situation, my situation, and, the rest, unfortunately, is history.
From Scott, just how this got started.
Sure. Yeah, and to your point, Heinz, I had never had any intention. The thing never crossed my mind. In the past, I had inside information every day, but I never really thought about ever acting on it and doing anything. It was taboo. It was just something that you didn't do. But so how this started, it was about back in 1999 that I met. I guess I can say Shaw, the other friend, good friend of mine. We played golf. Our wives and I, we went out for dinner from time to time. Occasionally went on a weekend trip. We did things as a couple. Really didn't do much as a family, but we became good friends. I wouldn't say he was my best friend, but certainly a good friend. And so the time frame of when in question is from late 2010 till about May of 2012. So prior to 2010, Shaw, we'd be golfing, we'd be at dinner, and Shaw would be asking me questions and, about my work. It was no more than your wife asking a question, how's work today, and so forth. And, I might have said, I would say things as if, God, I got to go out of town for a certain client. There's blah, blah, blah. I start talking about why I'm going out of town. Or I just happen to mention that, one of the products that my client is selling is doing really well. Nothing that was, I'm fairly confident that there's nothing that was non-public. And none of my comments were, shall we say, inappropriate. But, Shaw watched the stock market very carefully. He was able to make his own conclusions about what to do in the stock market. And, I think that he slowly got wind of the fact that, hey, maybe I can play the market based on what I'm hearing. So he took what I was telling him and put two and two together, got four, and started making trades. So, this is probably for a year, maybe before, and then one day he tells me, again, before the fall of 2010, he tells me, he goes, hey, Scott, just so you know, I traded I made some trades based on what you said. And I go, what do you mean what I said? I go, well, you were talking about what was going on with your clients. I said, we were having a conversation and so forth. So I was extremely upset and kind of not upset but shocked. And I told him, well, dude, it was probably my tone. I go, dude, that's not right. We can't do that. That kind of went back and forth, and unfortunately, there's a line there. You end up getting to a point where you cross that line, and some point during the latter part of 2010, when he was talking about his business and his business struggling and so forth, he started talking about the need to make a little bit more money and asked me if I would do this, and we went back and forth, and again started trading in what I consider to be small dollars. But ultimately, sometime after the fall of 2010, we go back and forth like that slippery slope you were talking about. It just got a little steeper and steeper and steeper. And, I unfortunately crossed over that line and provided him some non-public data that he, traded on. And from there, it really kind of stayed like that, but it was really kind of just like that, where he's following the stock market. He's sees a few days before one of my clients were to release earnings. He'd call up and say, hey, what's going on here? Sometimes I would say nothing, and other times, unfortunately, I never shared with him a release. I just kind of gave him broad terms about what might be happening with a particular stock. So you can see that over a period of time, like a year and a half, that it advanced to where it ultimately got to. The 2008 financial crisis, that people were not spending a lot of money on jewelry. So his business was given to him, or it was handed down by his father. And so his client base was just getting older. I think his father had been in the business for over 50 years. And so combined with an aging client base and the 2008 financial crisis, that's where he had told me and told authorities as well that he wasn't making any money from his business. And, it was around then that his questions started, and the process really began to, the little pebble started going down the slope, if you will, and grew into something, a lot bigger. But that's kind of what was going on in his life. That really was the impetus behind why he was doing what he did. Yes, there was concern. Yes, I did some kind of soul searching and saying to myself, why am I doing this? But never really did I consider broadly the potential repercussions that could have happened and are still happening. I guess I rationalized it that, it's by no way an excuse. I've never made an excuse. I blame myself for everything that went on, but I rationalized it probably in my head times that, all right, well, I'm helping this guy out. Who's it going to hurt? If he's making $10,000 or $15,000, it's wrong. It was a weighing of risk and reward, if you will, and I weighed the risks, and because financially there was no motivation. At first in these trades, he wasn't giving me any money, nor did I ever ask, and I wasn't doing it for that. It was just, is it worth the risk of helping out a friend whose business is struggling and not doing well, versus the risk to myself? And I could tell you, I didn't spend a great deal of time thinking about people other than myself, or the firm, or the clients, or family, or anything like that. And it was really just, that is really the clear takeaway. That when you get to that line, make sure you really think about who might be impacted if you cross over that line. It never went away. It never went away because I think over time, I think that I can't talk about what was going through his head. I have not spoken with him in a year and a half. But I can think that from a financial standpoint, that if you're involved in a financial fraud, and you're starting to get some money, and maybe you know better than I, you're starting to realize some money from that fraud, and you start to maybe get a little bit more money, and you say, all right, well, I didn't get caught. I just made $10,000, I didn't get caught. I just made $50,000, I didn't get caught. Made $100,000, I didn't get caught. And I think, as he wasn't getting caught money, that so my thinking that none of that ever occurred to me. So I just thought that every time I was doing it, what I was doing was wrong. And And but again, I continue to rationalize it to myself that nothing would ever be found out, and no one would be worse for wear for it. So the pain was always there, but unfortunately, I didn't go back to my the ethics and morals which I was trained, and I didn't fall back on those as I should have.
Yeah, I think I teach ethics, and one of the things I see all the time is you can have all the ethics training in the world, but for all of us, there are more important things like families, and sometimes it's friendship, and so you kind of put aside, but you override your years of training. So was that ever a conscious issue for you, Scott? To say I'm not going to do what I know is I've been trained to do, and what the right thing is, and how will the firm feel? And
it was a feeling that I had. No, to give you a direct answer, I never thought about the firm. I did know and understand the affidavits that I completed and the compliance aspect, the things I had to do about independence and ethics and this type of thing, and I was aware of it. And so it was I knew it was wrong. It was a difficult time during this 16, 17 months. But it was unfortunately short-lived. So if I gave him information on a Monday, I had rationalized it in my head where I wasn't worried about it or wasn't really thinking about it by Thursday or Friday. And then, for the next 3 months, I didn't think about it. So that was part of that was kind of the regular routine that I would go through.
Share with people what's going to happen next month?
Yeah, I'm going to go on a sabbatical around July 18th. Be headed to a minimum security camp, where I'm told, where I will serve whatever. It's a 14-month sentence. There's a reduction for good time. There's a reduction for potential to spend part of it in a halfway house or home confinement, depending on a variety of things. And whatever it is, I'll deal with that as it comes, just like I've dealt with all the other challenges of this. I don't think the firm's systems around this are designed to catch anything. They're designed to establish the appropriate behavioral actions to convey a very strong and complete understanding of what the rules with respect, whether it be independence, acting with integrity, ethics, morals. They drill it into you through examples, and once or twice a year you sit through a couple-hour class to go through it. So the only thing that they have from a standpoint of monitoring or catching, if you will, would be, from an independent standpoint, and that, the whatever investments I own, or who I might have my mortgage with, who I have my insurance policy with, and so forth, all has to be independent in fact and in appearance. So, there was a great deal of monitoring that the firm, and I assume all the firms do, in seeing what companies I invest in and so forth. And so I really think that the processes that the firms have are around knowledge sharing and to make you aware of what not to do. And unfortunately, I knew what not to do, and I made the mistake of doing exactly that. So I don't think any changes need to be made per se to those systems, but that's where I really think the processes and systems are designed.
Back to when this whole thing happened, my recollection is it was back in March of 2013, so a little over a year ago. And was there something special about the day that it blew up?
Yeah, March 20th. Unfortunately, and that was my wife's birthday. So the FBI, that outside my house what amounted to be, I guess, for about 2 hours before they actually came to the door. They waited for my son to go to school. They waited for my wife. I think she went to the gym. And so they knocked on the door, and they identified themselves and said, "Can we come in?" And they said, "There's a team at the house of they go, we want to talk to you about your relationship with Brian Shaw, and there's a team at his house right now." And the FBI's principal concern was they really believed that it was not. They really believed that because of the money involved, that there were a dozen Brian Shaws, that there was a ring, whether it involved other people at the firm or whether it involved other people who I was passing information to. I could tell by their questions that they were concerned that that they had hit onto something, and they asked me point blank, "How many other people are you passing information to?" And it was right then I said, "There's absolutely no one. I admit that I have passed information to Mr. Shaw. I don't know, I don't know how much he made or what he did with it. He never told me. But I told him, I said, there's no way, there's no one else involved." And they said, "All right, well, you should engage an attorney, and then give me a call." He left me his card, and then give me a call in a few days after you engage an attorney, and think about. And I remember his last words: "Think about the question I asked you. Think about anybody else that you might have come in contact with that can be involved in this, because it's your best interest to let us know." And again, I told him, no, there was nobody else, but they clearly believed that there was. So that was really pretty much the worst day. To that point, that had been the worst day of my life. There certain days have unfortunately eclipsed that after the fact, but that, and having to then have my wife come home about an hour after they left and to sit down with her and tell her everything, it was, that was just a day that I don't think I could ever get through again.
And so your wife was completely unaware, which doesn't surprise me. I've seen this a number of times.
Yeah, absolutely unaware. She had no clue. Very disappointed. Her reaction was, obviously she's very disappointed. And her reaction was probably similar to, in the end, her reaction was similar to most of my friends. It said, "How could you do something so stupid? But this doesn't change anything. I still love you, or, I still consider you to be a good friend. I know that this is not your character." So it's, it was hard to listen to that, but it was, at least I knew that my entire world wasn't falling around me. It was, certainly my professional world was, but it was nice to at least know that from a personal standpoint, I was still, had a support system around me. It would be a phone call. There'd be a phone call, and he would ask, and I'd give him some information if it was, and sometimes I'd give him information, and he didn't act on it. I mean, ultimately, he made his own decision. My understanding, and he said on numerous occasions, and somewhat passive-aggressive on my part, I say that I didn't ask for money, but yet he offered it, and I took it. So it's kind of like kind of BS that I say that. But early on, so he would. I never, to this day, he never told me how much he made on a particular trade. So he gave me, early on, he gave me $1,000, he gave me $2,500. Ultimately, there was one time where he did give me $10,000. Most of the time, it was $3,000 or $5,000. And he would say that he was splitting it 3 ways. And he said, a third for me, a third for him, and a third to the government, and pay his taxes. I'm like, okay. I didn't then say to myself, all right, well, how much did you make? If you made $30,000, I should be getting 10. I just accepted what he told me and moved on. And so after the trade, after he did what he did, sometime within next week, he'd say, hey, I'm standing outside your house, or hey, on your way home, stop by my place, and I got something for you. And it's like it said in the picture and in the news. Give me a small little envelope, and there'd be some cash in it. I wouldn't even count it then, but I would just go home, put it away, and that was pretty much it. Based on what he'd given me and the value of me going through and remembering all the money and jewelry and the concerts, the 4 or 5 concerts that we went to, I ended up with about $70,000. And I just did the math and said, all right, one third. He's making something around $200,000. And it wasn't until I was actually in my attorney's car driving down to the courthouse for my arraignment when I was checking my email on my phone and saw one of those WallStreetJournal.com deals, and it said, informant in KPMG case makes over $1 million in gains. And I nearly just lost it in the car. My attorney looked at my face and he said, "Are you all right?" I really felt I was just overcome with the magnitude of it all. Now I kind of understand why the government. It hit me, right? Why the government was going after. Why this was such a big deal to them. Why, so at the same time that's hitting me, I'm also being hit with the fact that, wow, here's somebody that was one of my good friends that basically had been lying to me for, a year and a half about what he was making. And not that I really could care less that he made it. Ultimately, the amount was 1.3, which ultimately the SEC revised upward to 1.6. I don't know how they did their calculations or what have you, but here's a guy who made $1.6 million. Basically put us both at significant risk by trading at the volumes that he did. And, so I'm sitting in a car going down to my arraignment where I'm going to get arrested. Everything around my life is caving in, and I'm being hit with, with the magnitude of the seriousness of it and how significant this was. So, the numbers still, and I think you're right, and going back to one of your other comments, I think you're right. It wasn't the dollars involved, when the dollars I got or even the dollars he got. It was my position of trust in the firm that was really made this a kind of a sensationalistic type of event that the media just